Hi, I'm David from Levika Photography, and today we're going to be talking about the Olympus OMD-EM5 Mark II. Is it the best camera ever? This second generation Olympus has a 16 megapixel sensor, pretty much the same sensor that was in the original one. And apparently the sensor is designed by Panasonic, which really doesn't surprise me because the micro four thirds lenses are interchangeable between the two camera systems, which makes it really cool. You have a super huge expanded line of lenses. It's a weather sealed body, and everything on this thing is programmable, and it's wonderfully designed, has an elegant classic look to it. It has 5-axis image stabilization. It does a 40 megapixel JPEG or a 64 megapixel RAW, has a flip out screen, and shoots video at 1080 at 60 frames per second. And really this thing is just a workhorse, giving you 3 cameras in one. Video, super high res, and casual shooting. Alright, overall I really like the design of this, but the grip is just terrible. Now luckily they put a little thumb pad on here to help you hold it, but your fingers are trying to hold this thing and they just want to slide right out of there, and to me that just seems like it's a really bad idea. So if you shoot with this, it's easier to do it handheld. Even though it's such a small camera, shooting it with one hand becomes a little tricky, and it's so easy to just slip off. So realistically, I'm probably going to have to invest in a battery grip, but the screen itself is excellent. Equally as good as the OMD-EM1. Full functionality. You can do the selfie shot, you can flip it out, turn it at any angle. I really like that part. The only other problem is the actual eye viewer. There you go. It's a little slow from when I moved the camera over. That's actually kind of cool that we can see that. But anyway, I'm not a huge fan of the eyepiece at all. You know, I love it on the A7R, just not on this thing. In-camera 5-axis image stabilization. Ah, yeah, that feels good. Oh. The thing I love about this camera is the shutter. That sound is just phenomenal. I mean, that is like, that's the best shutter sound ever. And the reason why, you know, you don't have mirror slap for one, which is good, but you don't on any of those Sonys either. Now, the thing I do love about the mechanical focal plane shutter is that we get a natural sync speed of 400th of a second. Olympus is only advertising 250 because if you use an Olympus flash, it's only 250. But if you use a non-Olympus flash, like a Youngnow or an Apperlite or just whatever, you can get up to 400th of a second before you get any curtain shadowing. That to me is phenomenal. That's pretty much low end of high-speed sync without having high-speed sync. I think that's great. But the silent mode shutter on here, for some reason, only goes to 200th of a second with a flash. I don't know why they slowed it down like that. It's kind of a bummer because you'd think that digitally they'd be able to do it faster than mechanical shutter. But instead, that's pretty much where the full shutter is exposed ends. And then after that, it starts striping. Oh, God, I just love this thing. Anyway, why am I holding a Hasselblad in the middle of an EM5 Mark II review? Well, there's a reason for it. You know, Hasselblad is a fairly old company. They came out in the 40s, been to the moon, you know, did all kinds of crazy stuff. But what they're really known for is medium format backs that have extremely high resolving lenses. The reason why I wanted to bring that out was because it plays a huge part in this camera. A huge part. 2 years ago, Hasselblad came out with a back called the 200C. And it has a 50 megapixel sensor, and what they did with it was they decided that, you know, they wanted to go to an even higher resolution. But why reinvent the sensor to do this? There's no point. So, you know, all you're going to do is create more density, more issues, you know, more noise, whatever. So basically what they did is they took that 50 megapixel sensor and they clocked it 6 times over 6 pixels. That's it. But the whole sensor moved 6 pixels, filling the information in between the pixels. So anyway, what that did is that generated a 200 megapixel image, which is just outstanding. Well, it turns out that Olympus decided to follow the same idea. And based off of that idea, they're taking their image stabilizer and making the image stabilizer rotate that 16 megapixel sensor 8 times. And as it's going around, it's putting the information in between all the pixels and layering the color. Now the K3 II that just came out is doing the same thing, but it's only layering the color. It's not actually adding the information in between. But what makes that cool is now we've got a 64 megapixel RAW coming off of this camera, or we've got a 40 megapixel JPEG coming off of it. Outstanding. Can't get any better than that. It's like, holy crap, that is the coolest thing ever. There are drawbacks, however. One, because the sensor is actually moving, if you have any wind in the shot at all, you're going to get this weird cross-hatching effect, which is really annoying. The other thing that really drives me nuts about it is you're limited to an 8-second exposure. And, you know, it's understandable why they limit to that, because when you do an 8-second exposure, it actually takes over a minute to record that exposure, and then it takes another 30 seconds to process it. So, you know, you can't really do handheld with a high-res version. It has to be on a tripod. But it's just amazing. So here's an image of a Paul Klee painting that I did, and I shot this a week ago with this camera, and you know, just rolling around the image here and looking at it, look at the detail of this thing. I mean, wow, that is just amazing. So here we'll go in to the tightest bit of detail, and now we'll come out again, and you know, you could do just the amount of studio photography now that you can actually perform, and the size of the work is just amazing. I mean, this really lays waste to the A7R in the studio. I couldn't believe it. That was probably 2 seconds. And then on the A6000 here, let's go ahead and do the same image. Or sorry, the A7R. Let me focus in here. Okay. So we'll compare those in the studio. So here's an image that I shot at Tempe Camera when I was doing my initial review of the EM5 Mark II. And let me zoom into this image here. And here is the A7R. And then let me bring this up and compare it to the Em5 II of the same shot. And then let me zoom all the way in on both. It's like, holy crap. That is so much information. That is so cool. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit record. And then we're just going to do some smooth panning. We got Tempe Camera sign in there. And let's come over here and get some flowers. One thing that's actually kind of nice is you can put your focus point where you want it to be over here, just by touching the screen, and that is really cool. Okay, so obviously the autofocus on the Olympus is not phase detection, it is contrast detection, but it actually does a very good job. And the fact that you can touch the screen to actually hit your focus points even faster is a huge bonus. I really like that feature. But right off the bat, the Olympus actually has a very large file size for low compression, but realistically, I mean, if the A6000 was stabilized, I think that it would actually output still slightly better video, a little bit more detail. The A6000 obviously has a more neutral white balance. The Olympus's white balance is just a little yellow, but you can actually correct that later on. The image stabilization, though, on this camera is just phenomenal. Now, in this example, I'm using the kit lens, but if you decide to use just a manual focus lens, then you need to go into the image stabilization settings and actually tell it what focal length the lens is, and that will create the profile you need for image stabilization. Again, right here you can see it's slightly warmer than the A6000. And the downfall of this is that you cannot change your settings while you're recording. Unlike the Sony, you can do whatever you want. Change the shutter speed, ISO, everything. On the Olympus, not while you're recording. If you think that was cute, wait until you see this. This is the little Olympus FL-M3 flash that actually comes with the camera. And it's a fully rotating bounce flash. It has a guide number of 30, which is actually very impressive. And it takes about 3 seconds to recycle. There we go. Yeah, about 3 seconds. And this is on full power right now. As far as how wide it is, it does actually seem to be fairly wide. I'm guessing somewhere in the neighborhood of 9mm. Meaning if you used a 9mm lens on here, it should just cover it. I'm guessing. It may go all the way down to 7. I'm really not sure, but it is fairly wide. And it actually projects a very even beam of light, so really can't complain about it. I mean, it's handy, and it's just so tiny to keep in your bag and light and weighs nothing. And the thing that's crazy about it is it comes with this little felt bag. It's a nice little bag, and it even has a belt loop, so maybe you want to accessorize with it, stick it somewhere, whatever. So what did I think about this? It's as unique as the jacket I'm wearing. This thing is just crazy. Like this. Crazy. Like me, this camera has issues. Not a bunch, but just a few that you need to know about. Alright, so right off the bat, let's talk about the image stabilization. I can't stress enough that you need to set the proper lens focal length in the menu for the lens that you're using. Otherwise you're going to get a weird jello effect, and you don't want that. Outside of that, the image stabilization on this thing is amazing. Now, one thing you do need to know is that if you go into burst mode, the image stabilization is going to turn off. Now, a lot of people kept coming to me when the A7 II came out, and they were like, are you going to dive on this? And I was like, the A6000 does everything that the A7 II does, but it's not image stabilized. And it's almost the same resolution, it's, really close. Should I dive on it? But then I thought about it, and I was like, well, realistically, we have an image stabilizer for the A6000 for video that we hardly ever use, obviously. And then we also, the A6000 does 12 frames per second. So just like this, there's no image stabilization when you're bursting, so it's really not a big deal. At 12 frames per second, you're going to get something in focus. On this thing, same thing. At 10 frames per second, you're definitely going to get something in focus. On the body, I already talked about the grip, but the other thing that you need to know is the eyepiece. This eyepiece does not want to stay on. And every time I throw the camera in my bag, not every time, but most of the time, I usually find this someplace else in my bag. And it drives me crazy. Now on the A6000, you have kind of a deep eye cup, so it's not a big deal. I don't even use them on there. But with this one, the glass is right there, right on the edge. So, I don't want it to get scratched. So that's a little bit of an issue. The camera itself, as I said, is fully customizable. Now, what I did was I ran into 2 issues. I changed the HDR button from HDR to peak focusing, and I changed the function button over here to zoom magnification for manual focusing. That way I could focus really fast with manual lenses, of course. But after I set those parameters, Now it seems like every other time when the camera falls asleep, it stays asleep and it doesn't come back on. So I have to turn the camera off and then on again, and then it comes back up, but it's not always consistent. Now here's the issue I was going to tell you guys about, was on the touch screen here, you have two modes, and if you go here, if you want to go to a setting, like set your ISO, I keep touching it, it's not going to set, so you have to tap it several times, and usually kind of hard to get it to pop up. So the sensitivity of the menu buttons is really, really low, and it takes a lot to actually get that thing activated. So that's kind of an issue. Now the other problem that I have with it is the actual presets. Now I like presets, and I like the fact that you can go in and do whatever you want in presets. But in here, I went in and I created you're allowed 4 presets, and that's basically setting the camera up the way that you want it to for 4 different styles. So I filled those presets with that, not a problem. And then I wanted to change some of the information in those presets. I went in and changed those, not a problem. Then I decided to assign those presets to the wheel to make it really quick for me, which worked out great. I mean, I was able to access everything. But then when I tried to go change those presets again, I couldn't change anything. It wouldn't save. Well, actually, it would say it was saving, but it didn't actually save. So then I would have to delete the preset and then reset it up, put it back in, and then relink it to the wheel, and that seemed to work. So kind of a bit of a mess, but it's like me, just a bit of a mess. But other than that, this is really an outstanding camera. And this one is mine. So you're going to start seeing a little bit more information about Micro Four Thirds coming out about this, and including a review of the Rokinon lens, because this thing is outstanding on here. But anyway, I hope you guys like this review. If you do, give me a thumbs up. Leave a comment, subscribe to my channel, and I hope you guys have a good day. We'll talk to you later.